So I want to give you guys a little bit of a dairy tour. And this is a dairy that I had the opportunity to travel to and tour at an ag teacher conference about 10 years ago in Fresno, California. And of course, Fresno is in that central valley of California. Lots of agriculture, lots of dairies. And we find that dairy production tends to follow those population centers. So of course, it makes sense that California has a lot of dairies based upon the number of people that California has. And so the first part of the dairy tour looked like this. We actually got to watch these cows that entered into this milking carousel, as it was called, right here. And you can see like this cow where the mouse is, and she's getting ready to come in right past. This is Mr. Stapleton, a friend of mine from Idaho. Enter into this dairy or this carousel right here. And if you've ever worked beef cows, dairy cows are a little different in this situation. There's no cowboys in the back that are hooping and hollering. There's nobody with a sorting stick or even a hot shot. These cows come up pretty much out of habit. And if you remember back to that class lecture where we talked about the habits that these animals form based upon certain stimulus, these cows, this becomes a habit for them. And this happens twice a day. In fact, the cows want milked. In fact, their udders get so engorged and full, it's uncomfortable. They're ready to be milked. And so the cows really make their way in here. The other neat thing that happens is they get a little snack. They get some grain and some feed inside this carousel. So they know that by coming on the carousel, they get to ride the carnival ride and they get a little snack. And so it's really easy. It's really straightforward. If I go back real quick, you can see that there's cows leaving over here on this side. And so the cows enter this carousel right here, and then they ride it all the way around, and they come back to the other side. And we'll show you a picture of that here in a little bit. So the cows enter in this carousel, and a worker would be standing down here on the concrete, and then each one of those cows gets a milker up here on their udder. And there's four of those for each of their teats. Okay, so cows enter the carousel out of habit. They do it out of fun. They get fed afterwards, and they also know that it's going to release pressure on that udder. Here's more of a close-up of the automatic milker, and you can see each one of these little silver with a black cap devices that get attached to the udder. You can actually see the milk flowing through this little piece right here. If you were up close, you would see it coming and going and squirting through that little tube. But that's where the milk goes, and then it, of course, goes through this black tube, and it all connects to one central cooling tank that holds all of the milk from these cows. So here's a picture of this carousel, and this carousel is going to rotate in a clockwise fashion. Okay, so right here, this cow is at the very beginning, and she's going to ride this carousel all the way around as it comes back over here. And it moves slow. It's not like a merry-go-round that's fast. It's not like you have to worry about the cows flying off of this big merry-go-round, so it's very slow. In fact, if I remember, it was about a 20-minute ride to start from right here and travel all the way around. Okay, so this is what they call a carousel. All right, and here's another view, and right here I want you to see down in the middle of this pit, because there's going to be a picture coming up that shows me down in that pit looking back up toward the top. And here it is. So this is me down in the middle of that carousel looking up at the cows, and they're checking us out, wondering what those crazy humans are doing down there in the bottom. Now, this was an interesting picture. Of course, all the cows we've seen up to this point have been Holstein. Holsteins are known for producing the most overall milk and the least percent of butterfat. But here's this cute little Jersey cow that acts like she's one of the girls, and she's on the carousel. And so why do we have Jersey cows intermixed with these big Holstein cows? We know that the Jerseys produce the least milk, but they produce the highest percent butterfat. And that's why they have them in with these big Holstein cows. These little Jersey cows are going to add the overall butterfat percentage to the operation. And so they have a requirement of a certain amount of milk quota to produce, but they also have a quota of butterfat that needs produced. And that's where these Jersey cows are going to help meet that butterfat quota. Now, this is outside. This is the barns. And so Fresno, California can get very hot. It was in late April when we were there, and you can see that it was kind of overcast that day. But all these cows have space outside that they can roam and get out and move around. But they can get up under these big barns and get shelter from sun. They're going to get shade when and if it rains. They're going to get shelter from the rain. But probably most important is that they're going to get shade and a little bit of relief from that heat. This gives you another idea of the space that these cows have to get out and wander around. Now, back in the Midwest, where there's more space and there might be more forage or pasture that these cows can get on, it's common for these dairies to put those cows out in pasture too. But these great big dairies, and this was about a 5,000 head dairy, this is a very common setup where the cows can get in and get shade, and they're going to get fed up here under these barns, but they have a lot of space to get out and roam around. So here's a picture from the inside of that barn, and this is the feed that is lined up against these feed bunks. The cows would reach through these little feed panels or these feed fences and eat the bunk and eat the feed. And it's interesting, if you look a little bit, you'll see this right there at the tip of the mouse, or right here, it's orange. And in fact, it is an orange. And you can see here's a close-up of the feed. Ground up hay, ground up silage. There's some corn in there. Ground up looks like grass hay and alfalfa. But they also fed spoiled oranges to these cows. And so in Fresno, California, there's big citrus production, but there also is big almond production. And so there are almond hulls also found within this. And almond hulls have the consistency of old boot leather, and it's high in fiber. So they grind up those almond hulls and they put into the feed. Now, the ration for these cows in California might be different than the ration as it would be in Texas or Wisconsin or somewhere in the Midwest. But of course, the ration is going to match the cows. This picture here shows the orange pile out back. And so these are rotten or spoiled oranges. Maybe those might be lemons. Okay, but of course, you're going to take these great big truckloads of this orange and this citrus fruit, and they're going to add it into the ration. Here's a picture of the almond hulls. These are harvested from the almond trees. They actually shake the snot out of those almond trees, and those almond seeds, pods come down, and then they take the hull off. They're very leathery and tough, and those would be considered a roughage because they're very high in fiber. Okay, so here's the calves that get weaned from those cows, and this is going to be one of those little calf huts. They have a little hut to get in here and stay out of the weather and get shade. They have a bucket of water, but then they're also going to be bottle fed. And here's one of the farm workers that's taking all of these bottles out and around to the dairy calves, and they're pre-mixed with milk replacer. They go around and they give each one of these calves bottles throughout the day. So they're getting milk, they're getting water, and as they get older, they're going to start being introduced into some roughage and some feed. They actually had a great big industrial sized mixer that mixes all of that milk replacer up for them. So if you've ever bottle fed a lamb or a calf, you know how much work there is into bottle feeding. And so now imagine if you had to haul around multiple trailers. Here is the Calf Hut City. And you can see, again, that's Mr. Stapleton's head there. But you can see all of these calves out and about in this little Calf Hut City. It's a city of calves. Now, there's a lot of hard work involved with being in a dairy, but it's not all hard work. The owners of the dairy, this is out the front door of the dairy. Out from the office, they have a little mini golf course set up. And so you can see a golf green right here, of course, with the flag. And so I'm sure they had some time to go out and spend having a good time when they weren't just out being dairy farmers. But that's a little bit of a dairy tour that I took in Fresno, California. Hopefully you found it interesting.